Hashtag Operation Alien Extinction. Part 1. The silence in the command bunker beneath Mount Cheyenne was deafening. Admiral Sarah Chun stared at the holographic display showing Earth's orbital space, now littered with the twisted remains of humanity's once proud fleet. 48 hours had passed since the Kithara collective surprise attack, and the numbers were still coming in. 3 billion dead. Entire cities turned to glass. The lunar colony's gone. Dr. Marcus Webb, the lead scientist for Project Prometheus, cleared his throat nervously. His hands trembled as he activated another hologram. This one showing detailed schematics of alien technology recovered from the wreckage floating in Earth's orbit. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The very weapons that had nearly destroyed humanity would now become the tools of their revenge. The Kithara made one critical mistake. Dr. Webb began, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. They assumed we were like every other species they've encountered. They thought one devastating blow would break us, make us surrender unconditionally. They don't understand human nature. General Rodriguez, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the Denver bombing, stepped forward. His weathered face showed the exhaustion of a man who hadn't slept since the attacks began, but his eyes burned with determination. They killed my daughter, my grandchildren. Hell, they killed everyone's families. But they left us alive, and that was their second mistake. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. The Kithara's message had been clear. Surrender within 72 hours or face complete extinction. What they didn't realize was that they had just declared war on a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare against their own kind. Now, for the first time in human history, every nation, every military force, every scientist and engineer had a single, unified purpose. Dr. Webb manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the alien plasma cannon technology. We've made incredible progress in just 2 days. The alien power systems are actually less sophisticated than we initially thought. They rely on a quantum crystalline matrix that we can not only replicate, but improve upon. Their shields use a frequency rotation system that's predictable once you understand the pattern. The room filled with murmurs of interest. These weren't the words of a defeated species begging for mercy. This was humanity beginning to bare its teeth. But here's the most important discovery, Dr. Webb continued, his voice dropping to an almost whisper. We've intercepted their communications. The Kithara collective consists of 47 different species spread across 12 star systems. They rule through fear and technological superiority, but they've never faced coordinated resistance. Every species they've conquered either surrendered immediately or fought disorganized, planet-bound defenses. Admiral Chun felt a cold smile spread across her face. Show them the invasion routes. The hologram shifted to display the local galactic arm. Red lines traced paths between star systems, showing the Kithara's standard invasion patterns. They always struck the most populated worlds first, breaking the spirit of resistance before systematically consuming entire civilizations. It was efficient, ruthless, and had worked for over 1,000 years. They're coming back in 68 hours, General Rodriguez stated. Our satellites detected their main fleet repositioning just outside the Oort cloud. They expect to find a broken species ready to kneel. Dr. Webb activated another section of the display. Instead, they're going to find something that's never existed in galactic history. A unified human war machine with 48 hours of pure rage fueling rapid technological advancement. We've already begun mass production of modified plasma weapons. Our stealth technology, combined with their power systems, will give us capabilities they can't predict. The bunker's main doors hissed open, admitting Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief engineer who had been working nonstop to reverse engineer alien technology. Her clothes were covered in grease and burn marks, but her expression was triumphant. We did it, she announced. The first prototype is ready for testing. We've managed to create a hybrid system that uses their quantum crystals, but powered by our fusion reactors. The output is 30% higher than their original design, and we've eliminated the frequency vulnerability in their shields. Admiral Chun stood up straighter. Around the bunker, exhausted officers and scientists began to show signs of hope for the first time since the attack. The human spirit, which the Kithara had tried to break, was instead crystallizing into something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. How long until we can outfit a strike force? Admiral Chen asked. 12 hours for a full squadron of modified fighters. 24 hours for a fleet of converted destroyers. The manufacturing centers that survived the initial attack are working at maximum capacity. We're also implementing rapid training protocols for pilots who will be using alien-human hybrid technology. General Rodriguez pulled up intelligence reports on his tablet. Our surviving Special Forces teams have been analyzing the attack patterns. The Kithara use predictable formations, probably because they've never needed to adapt their tactics. Their strategy relies on overwhelming technological superiority rather than tactical flexibility. Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what we thought. They're not warriors in the human sense. They're more like extremely advanced bullies. They've been so successful for so long that they've never had to innovate during combat. The room fell quiet as everyone absorbed the implications. Admiral Chun walked to the main display and stared at the red marks indicating the positions of the incoming Kithara fleet. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of humanity's entire future. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not just going to defend Earth. We're not just going to survive their second attack. We're going to do something that no species in galactic history has ever done. We're going to take the fight to them. She turned to face the room, and every person there could see the fire in her eyes. The Kithara Collective thinks they understand war because they've conquered species that were unprepared. They're about to learn what real warfare looks like. They're about to learn what happens when you threaten a species that has spent millennia fighting itself and has now found a common enemy. Dr. Vasquez activated a new hologram showing the hybrid weapon systems they had developed. Our analysis shows that their home worlds have never been attacked. Their populations have lived in peace for generations, protected by their military superiority. They have no idea what total war means. Then, we're going to teach them, General Rodriguez said grimly. When they arrive expecting to finish off a broken species, they're going to find out what human beings are capable of when we're properly motivated. Admiral Chen began outlining the battle plan. The Kithara expected to find Earth's orbital defenses destroyed and the population demoralized. Instead, they would encounter an entirely new type of warfare, one that combined human tactical innovation with alien technology, powered by a rage and determination that no species in the galaxy had ever possessed. The countdown had begun. In 66 hours, the Kithara would return to complete humanity's destruction. They would instead discover that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The human war machine was beginning to turn, and its target wasn't just survival. It was the complete annihilation of every species that had participated in the massacre. The age of human expansion into the galaxy was about to begin, and it would be written in the blood of Earth's enemies. Operation Alien Extinction. Part 2. Commander Jake Reaper Morrison adjusted the neural interface, connecting his brain to the hybrid fighter systems. The cockpit was a fusion of human ergonomics and alien technology, with displays showing energy readings that would have been impossible just days ago. Around him, the other pilots of Alpha Squadron performed similar calibrations, each one a volunteer who had lost everything in the Kithara attack. The test flights had exceeded every expectation. The hybrid fighters moved like nothing humanity had ever built, capable of maneuvers that would have killed human pilots if not for the alien inertial dampening technology. More importantly, they were invisible to Kithara's sensors. Dr. Webb's team had cracked the alien detection systems and built countermeasures into every new vessel. Morrison's wingman, Captain Lisa Ghost Park, activated her comm system. Reaper, you seeing these power readings? We're running at 150% of standard Kithara output. Whatever our engineers did to their technology, we just became the apex predators in this system. Through the viewports of their fighters, Earth looked different than it had a week ago. The blue marble was scarred with brown patches where cities once stood, but surrounding the planet was something that would have terrified the Kithara had they been able to detect it. Hundreds of human vessels, rebuilt with alien technology and powered by pure vengeance, hung in perfect stealth formation. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the comm system from the flagship, the newly constructed UES Retribution. All units, this is Admiral Chen. The Kithara fleet has just entered our outer sensor range. They're maintaining the same formation they used during the initial attack, 12 dreadnoughts 48 destroyers, and approximately 200 fighter craft. Morrison felt his pulse quicken. The enemy force was massive, but intelligence reports suggested that the Kithra had brought the same vessels that had annihilated Earth's original defenses. They had no idea that humanity had spent every minute of the last 48 hours transforming from victims into something far more dangerous. Dr. Webb's voice joined the communication from the science vessel UES Prometheus. All pilots, remember that their shields operate on a rotating frequency system. Your onboard computers have been programmed with the pattern. Fire in sequence as we practiced, and their defensive systems will collapse within seconds. The waiting was the hardest part. Morrison watched his tactical display as the Kithra fleet approached Earth's orbital space. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never experienced defeat, their formations loose and predictable. The lead dreadnought was already broadcasting the standard surrender demand on all human frequencies. This is Fleet Commander Zektar of the Kithra Collective. You have failed to surrender within the specified time limit. Your species will now be terminated. Resistance is futile, as you have already witnessed. Prepare for extinction. Morrison felt his jaw clench. The arrogance in that alien voice would have been infuriating under normal circumstances. Now, after losing his wife and children in the Denver glassing, it was fuel for the fire that would consume the Kithra. Admiral Chin's response was broadcast on all frequencies, not just to the human fleet, but to the aliens as well. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Space Force. You made a mistake, Zektar. You left us alive. And now you're about to learn what human beings do to those who threaten our families. The Kithra fleet continued its approach, apparently unconcerned by the Admiral's words. Their sensors showed no signs of human space assets. The stealth technology was working perfectly. Morrison could imagine the confusion on their ships as they detected only the debris from their previous attack. All units, this is Admiral Chun. Phase 1 begins now. Let's show them what we learned from their first lesson. The UES Retribution decloaked directly behind the Kithra flagship, so close that Morrison could see the alien vessel's hull details through his enhanced optics. The surprise was total. The massive human battleship, rebuilt with alien technology and armed with weapons that exceeded Kithra specifications, opened fire at point-blank range. The flagship's shields, designed to deflect attacks from primitive human weapons, offered no protection against their own technology enhanced by human engineering. The first salvo tore through the alien vessel's defenses like they weren't even there, sending explosions cascading across its hull. Morrison heard Captain Park's whoop of joy through the comm system. Scratch 1, alien dreadnought. Look at those secondary explosions. The rest of the human fleet decloaked in perfect coordination. Destroyers appeared in the midst of the Kithra formation, their hybrid weapons systems charging. Fighters materialized around alien capital ships like angry hornets, too small and fast for the massive vessels to target effectively. But Morrison's squadron had a special mission. While the main fleet engaged the Kithra warships, Alpha Squadron was tasked with something that would send a message throughout the galaxy. Their target was the Kithra command vessel, the ship carrying the collective's leadership for this final cleanup operation. Alpha Squadron, this is Reaper. Target is 2 kilometers off our starboard vector. Ghost, take your flight and hit their engine clusters. Devil Flight, you're with me on the command center. Let's make this personal. The hybrid fighters accelerated beyond anything the Kithra had encountered. Morrison's vessel moved like liquid lightning, dodging defensive fire that seemed to move in slow motion compared to human reflexes enhanced by alien technology. The Kithra had ruled the galaxy through technological superiority, but they had never faced an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their tactical capabilities. Morrison's targeting system locked onto the command vessel's bridge. Through his neural interface, he could feel the alien technology responding to human determination in ways its creators never intended. The quantum crystals that powered his weapons seemed to resonate with his rage, producing energy outputs that exceeded all theoretical maximums. This is for my family, Morrison whispered as he fired. The command vessel's bridge vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. Secondary explosions rippled through the alien ship as Morrison's wingmen followed up with precision strikes that targeted every critical system. Within seconds, the vessel that had carried the Kithra leadership was nothing more than expanding debris. Throughout the battle zone, similar scenes played out as human forces demonstrated tactics the aliens had never encountered. Earth's defenders didn't just fight. They fought with a creativity and viciousness that came from a species that had spent millennia warring against itself. The Kithara began attempting to retreat, but Admiral Chun had anticipated this. Human vessels appeared at the system's edge, cutting off escape routes with precise hyperspace interdiction fields. The alien fleet was trapped in Earth's gravity well, facing an enemy they couldn't understand. All units, this is Admiral Chun. No survivors. No one goes home to warn the collective. Today, the Kithara learned that genocide has consequences. Morrison watched his tactical display as the last alien destroyer exploded under concentrated human fire. The entire engagement had lasted less than an hour, but it had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The species that had ruled through fear had just encountered something they had never imagined possible. A unified human military force equipped with their own technology and motivated by pure vengeance. Dr. Webb's voice came through the comm system, filled with barely controlled excitement. All vessels, maintain positions around the debris field. We're detecting massive amounts of intact alien technology, including what appears to be their complete star chart database. We now know the location of every Kithara colony and military installation. Morrison felt a cold smile spread across his face. The battle for Earth was over, but the war was just beginning. The Kithara had demonstrated that they were willing to commit genocide against peaceful species. Now they would learn what happened when they tried that against a species that had perfected the art of war. The human fleet began collecting alien technology and intelligence from the wreckage. Each piece of data brought them closer to their ultimate goal, the complete and utter destruction of every species that had participated in the attempted extinction of humanity. Phase 1 was complete. The Kithara expedition had been annihilated without a single survivor. Phase 2 would begin as soon as humanity could build a fleet capable of taking the war to alien space. And Phase 3 would be the end of the Kithara collective forever. Hashtag Operation Alien Extinction. Part 3, the manufacturing facility on Luna had been completely rebuilt in the 3 weeks following the Kithara defeat at Earth. Where once stood mining operations and research stations, now sprawled the largest military production complex in human history. Admiral Chun stood on the observation deck of the U.S. Retribution, watching as automated systems assembled warships at a pace that would have seemed impossible just a month ago. Dr. Webb joined her at the viewport, his tablet displaying production statistics that defied every projection they had made. We're exceeding our most optimistic estimates by 300%. The alien manufacturing technology, combined with human industrial efficiency, has created something unprecedented. We're building a dreadnought every 18 hours. Below them, the newest addition to Earth's fleet was taking shape. The U.S. Vengeance was twice the size of the largest Kithara vessel they had encountered, armed with weapons that combined human tactical innovation with alien energy systems. Its hull bore scars deliberately preserved from the battle for Earth, a reminder of what the human race was fighting for. Admiral Chun reviewed the intelligence data they had recovered from the destroyed Kithara fleet. The alien star charts revealed a galactic civilization built on systematic oppression and genocide. 47 species served the collective, but only 12 of them had done so voluntarily. The other 35 had been conquered, their populations enslaved or eliminated according to their usefulness to the Kithara. The moral calculations are simple, Admiral Chun said quietly. The species that joined the collective willingly participated in genocide. The enslaved species are victims who need liberation. We'll offer the enslaved species a choice: freedom or continued service to masters who no longer exist. General Rodriguez approached, carrying reports from the special operations teams that had been inserted into Kithara space using captured alien vessels. His expression was grim, but Admiral Chun could see satisfaction in his eyes. The reconnaissance missions to the border systems have been successful beyond our expectations. The Kithara have no idea what happened to their Earth expedition. Their communication systems are so centralized that the loss of the command vessel created a complete information blackout. They're waiting for a victory report that will never come. Dr. Webb activated a holographic display showing the Kithra territorial map. We've identified their primary military installations and population centers. The intelligence we captured shows they maintain a fairly standard imperial structure, a heavily defended core system with secondary military bases spread throughout their territory. Admiral Chun studied the display with the eye of a strategist who had spent her entire career preparing for the unthinkable. The Kithra had built their empire assuming they would never face serious resistance. Their defensive positions were designed to project power outward, not to protect against invasion. They made the same mistake that every successful empire makes eventually, she observed. They've become complacent. Their military doctrine hasn't evolved because they've never needed it to evolve. They're about to face an enemy that adapts and improves with every engagement. Commander Morrison entered the observation deck, still wearing his pilot's flight suit from the latest test runs. The new generation of human fighters incorporated lessons learned from the Earth battle, with improvements that pushed performance beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Admiral, the deep strike squadrons are ready for deployment. We've successfully tested the long-range stealth systems, and our pilots have mastered the alien navigation technology. We can hit targets anywhere in Kithra space without warning. Admiral Chin nodded approvingly. The plan that had been taking shape since the Earth victory was finally ready for implementation. Unlike the Kithra, who had announced their intentions and given humanity time to prepare, the human counterattack would come without warning or mercy. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived with her engineering team, carrying prototypes that represented the next evolution in human-alien hybrid technology. Admiral, we've made a breakthrough that changes everything. We've learned to modify the alien quantum crystals at the molecular level. The power output is now 4 times what the original Kithra systems could produce. She activated a small device that projected a miniature version of the weapon systems they had installed on the new fleet. But more importantly, we've created weapons that specifically target Kithra biotechnology. Their species uses biomechanical implants for enhanced cognitive function. We can disrupt those systems at the cellular level. Admiral Chun felt a cold satisfaction as she absorbed the implications. The Kithra leadership relied on technological enhancement to maintain their superiority over the enslaved species. Removing those enhancements would reduce them to their baseline capabilities that were far inferior to augmented humans. General Rodriguez pulled up tactical reports from the infiltration teams. Our people have been observing Kithra military installations for 2 weeks. Their security is almost non-existent by human standards. They've never faced enemies capable of stealth operations or sabotage. Their entire defensive strategy relies on overwhelming firepower rather than defensive depth. The holographic display shifted to show real-time intelligence from human agents operating deep in alien space. The images were disturbing. Massive slave facilities where conquered species were forced to build Kithra military equipment, extermination centers where useless populations were eliminated, and luxury facilities where the ruling class lived in comfort built on genocide. Admiral Chen's expression hardened as she reviewed the data. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not just fighting for revenge anymore. We're fighting for every species in this galaxy that has suffered under Kithra rule. This isn't just a war, it's a liberation. Dr. Webb highlighted specific installations on the tactical map. The reconnaissance teams have identified the primary command structures for each enslaved species. If we can eliminate the Kithra overseers simultaneously, we can trigger system-wide uprisings. The enslaved populations have been waiting for an opportunity like this for centuries. Commander Morrison stepped forward. Admiral, request permission to volunteer for the primary strike mission. My squadron wants to be the first to hit the Kithra home system. Admiral Chun considered the request carefully. Morrison and his pilots had proven themselves in the Earth battle, but the mission she was planning would make that engagement look like a training exercise. Commander, your squadron will lead the primary assault, but you won't be hitting the home system first. We're going to do something the Kithra will never expect. We're going to start with their most remote outposts and work our way toward the core. We want them to know we're coming. We want them to feel the fear that every species they've conquered has felt. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the strategic implications. This wasn't just a military campaign. It was psychological warfare designed to break the Kithera's confidence while simultaneously liberating their victims. Dr. Vasquez activated another display showing production timelines. We'll have a full invasion fleet ready within 6 weeks. 200 capital ships, 800 destroyers, and over 3,000 fighters. Each vessel will be equipped with a new quantum disruption weapons specifically designed to target Kithera technology. General Rodriguez smiled grimly. The enslaved species have been sending us intelligence through captured communication networks. They're ready to rise up the moment they see human forces in their systems. Some of them have been planning rebellions for decades, just waiting for someone powerful enough to challenge the collective. Admiral Chun turned back to the viewport, watching as another dreadnought took shape in the construction bays below. Each ship represented not just human industrial capacity, but the focused rage of an entire species that had been pushed beyond its breaking point. The Kithera wanted to teach humanity about fear and submission, she said quietly. Instead, they're about to learn something that no species in galactic history has ever taught them. They're going to learn what happens when you threaten a species that refuses to accept defeat. The human war machine was now fully operational, producing vessels and weapons at a rate that would soon overwhelm any defensive force the Kithera could mount. But more importantly, humanity was fighting with something the aliens had never encountered. A unified purpose backed by tactical innovation and absolute determination. The countdown to Phase 2 had begun. In 6 weeks, the Kithera would experience their first taste of the horror they had inflicted on countless other species. And, unlike their victims, the Kithera would not be caught off guard by technologically superior forces. They would be facing an enemy that had matched their technology and exceeded their capacity for war. #Operation Alien Extinction. Part 4. The Kithera border system of Veltar had never experienced an enemy attack in over 4 centuries. The massive orbital stations that processed resources from enslaved Zephyrian workers hummed with routine efficiency, their Kithera overseers confident in the protection offered by distance and reputation. That confidence shattered at precisely 14:30 local time when humanity announced its presence in the galaxy. Commander Morrison's fighter squadron materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation, their stealth systems rendering them invisible until the moment they opened fire. The quantum disruption weapons tore through Kithera biomechanical systems like acid through tissue, leaving alien commanders writhing in agony as their cybernetic enhancements failed catastrophically. All targets neutralized, Morrison reported as the last Kithera control station exploded in brilliant plasma fire. The enslaved workers are securing the facilities. Minimal casualties among the Zephyrians. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display from the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, monitoring simultaneous attacks across 12 Kithera border systems. Each strike followed the same pattern. Overwhelming force applied with surgical precision, targeting only the alien oppressors while liberating their victims. The response was immediate and exactly what human intelligence had predicted. Emergency communications flooded Kithera networks as news of the attacks spread through their territory. For the first time in their history, the collective was facing an enemy that struck without warning and possessed technology superior to their own. Dr. Webb monitored alien communication intercepts from a station aboard the science vessel UES Prometheus. Admiral, we're detecting massive panic throughout the Kithera command structure. They're recalling fleets from expansion operations and consolidating around their core systems. Excellent, Admiral Chin replied. Phase 3 can begin ahead of schedule. General Rodriguez, are the Liberation fleets ready? General Rodriguez confirmed readiness from his position aboard the UES Vengeance. The massive dreadnought was leading a task force designed specifically to support enslaved populations in their uprisings against Kithera rule. Unlike the initial strike forces, these fleets carried humanitarian supplies and technical assistance rather than pure destructive power. The first liberated system to request human assistance was the Zephyrian homeworld of Kalos Prime. The bird-like aliens have been enslaved for over 200 years, forced to use their natural flight abilities in dangerous mining operations that claimed thousands of lives annually. When human forces arrived in their system, the Zephyrians were ready with carefully planned sabotage operations that crippled Kithera infrastructure within hours. Commander Sarah Lightning Torres led the relief mission to Kalos Prime, her squadron escorting transport ships loaded with medical supplies and defensive equipment. The sight that greeted her in orbit around the planet was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Millions of Zephyrians emerging from underground hiding places, their wings spread in gestures of celebration that their species hadn't displayed in generations. UES Retribution. This is Lightning Squadron. The Zephyrian liberation is proceeding smoothly. They're requesting technical assistance to repair their atmosphere processors. The Kithra had been slowly poisoning their air to maintain control. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now commanding the engineering response teams, coordinated the technical support from her mobile command center. Lightning Squadron, we're dispatching repair teams immediately. The Zephyrians have maintained detailed records of Kithra sabotage over 2 centuries. We can reverse most of the environmental damage within 6 months. The liberation of Kalos Prime became the template for operations throughout Kithra space. Enslaved species provided intelligence about Kithra weaknesses and defensive positions, while human forces delivered the technological superiority needed to overcome alien military advantages. Each successful liberation sent shock waves through the collective's command structure. On Veltor, the massive industrial world that produced most of the collective's military equipment, the reptilian Sorok workers had spent decades secretly modifying production lines to include subtle flaws in Kithra weapons. When human forces arrived, the Sorok activated kill switches that disabled half the collective's military infrastructure simultaneously. The psychological impact on the Kithra was devastating. Supreme Commander Zektios, the highest-ranking survivor of the species' leadership caste, broadcast increasingly desperate demands for the human attacks to cease. His communications revealed a mindset completely unprepared for the type of warfare humanity was conducting. Unknown human commander, came the alien transmission intercepted by Dr. Webb's communication teams. You have violated the natural order of galactic civilization. The strong rule the weak. This is the way of the universe. Cease your attacks and accept your place as a client species, and we will allow your world to survive. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast throughout Kithra space, transmitted on every frequency, and translated into the languages of all 47 species that comprise the collective. Supreme Commander Zektis, you misunderstand the situation. We are not seeking to replace the Kithra as galactic rulers. We are here to end the concept of galactic rulership forever. The human fleet continued its advance toward the Kithra core systems, but the campaign had evolved beyond simple military conquest. Each liberated world became a staging area for further operations, with newly freed species contributing their own forces and knowledge to the growing rebellion. The Mantaric, an aquatic species that had been forced to operate underwater mining platforms, provided detailed information about Kithra atmospheric weaknesses. The Corvin, silicon-based life forms enslaved for their ability to survive in extreme environments, revealed the locations of hidden Kithra research facilities where horrific experiments had been conducted on captured prisoners from dozens of species. Commander Morrison found himself leading increasingly complex operations as the campaign progressed. His latest mission involved coordinating with representatives from 6 different liberated species to plan an assault on the Kithra research world of Nexus 7, where alien scientists had been developing biological weapons for use against troublesome slave populations. This is different from anything we've done before, Morrison explained to his squadron during their pre-mission briefing. We're not just fighting for humanity anymore. With a tip of the spear for every species that's ever suffered under Kithra rule. The assault on Nexus 7 demonstrated the full evolution of human military doctrine. Zephyrian pilots provided aerial reconnaissance using their natural flight abilities enhanced by human technology. Sorok ground forces used their strength and armor to assault fortified positions while human marines provided tactical coordination. Mantaric specialists disabled underwater defensive systems, while Corvin engineers neutralized environmental hazards. The Kithra defenders were overwhelmed not by superior numbers or better technology, but by tactics they had never imagined possible. They had built their empire by conquering isolated species one at a time. They had no experience fighting a coordinated alliance of multiple races working in perfect harmony. Dr. Webb analyzed the intelligence recovered from Nexus 7 with growing horror and determination. The research facilities contained evidence of experiments that violated every concept of civilized behavior. Biological weapons designed to target specific genetic markers, psychological torture techniques refined over centuries of practice, and systematic extermination programs that had eliminated entire species whose only crime was resistance to Kithra rule. Admiral, Dr. Webb reported grimly, "We've found evidence of crimes that go beyond even our worst estimates. The Kithra haven't just conquered and enslaved other species. They've systematically eliminated any group that showed signs of independent thought or technological potential." Admiral Chun reviewed the evidence with the cold fury that had driven humanity since the attack on Earth. "Doctor, compile everything into a comprehensive database. When this war is over, the galaxy will know exactly what the Kithra Collective was responsible for. History will remember who they were and what we had to do to stop them." The human advance continued toward the Kithra home systems, but now was supported by a growing coalition of liberated species, each one contributing unique capabilities to the war effort. The Collective's military forces were retreating on all fronts, unable to cope with an enemy that seemed to adapt and improve with every engagement. Supreme Commander Zektios made one final attempt to negotiate, offering to partition the galaxy between human and Kithra spheres of influence. Admiral Chen's response was transmitted throughout known space, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would understand humanity's position. The time for negotiation ended when you chose genocide as your opening move. It was the most fortified position in galactic history, and it was about to fall to a species that had learned to fly among the stars just over a century ago. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, surrounded by representatives from 47 liberated species. The irony was profound. The Collective had ruled through enforced diversity, using the unique abilities of enslaved races to maintain their power. Now that same diversity was arrayed against them, unified by shared suffering and led by humanity's tactical innovation. "All fleet commanders report ready status," Admiral Chen announced. The combined Liberation Fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 2,000 human vessels worked alongside ships from every species that had thrown off Kithra rule. The Zephyrian fighter squadrons moved like living clouds around massive Sorok battleships, while Mantaric stealth vessels prepared to disable underwater defensive installations on Dominus Prime's ocean world. Commander Morrison led the primary assault squadron, but his fighters now included pilots from a dozen different species, each one bringing unique capabilities enhanced by human technology. The diversity that had once been the Collective's strength was now humanity's greatest weapon. Supreme Commander Zektios transmitted one final message as the Liberation Fleet approached the outer defensive perimeter. His words carried the desperation of a species that had ruled for millennia and now faced extinction. "Human Admiral, you have won. The Collective surrenders. We offer you complete control of our technology and our territories. Spare our homeworld, and we will serve you as we once ruled others." Admiral Chen's response was broadcast throughout the system, heard by every Kithra civilian and military commander. "Supreme Commander, you still don't understand what this war is about. We didn't come here to replace you as galactic overlords. We came here to ensure that galactic overlords never exist again." Dr. Webb monitored the enemy's defensive systems from his position aboard the science vessel UES Prometheus. The quantum disruption weapons had evolved far beyond their original design, now capable of selectively targeting Kithra biomechanical systems while leaving other species completely unharmed. "Admiral, their defensive grid is designed around the assumption that attackers will use conventional tactics. They have no countermeasures for coordinated multi-species assault patterns." The attack began with the Corvin engineering teams disabling the gravity well generators that held the three-system defense network together. Their silicon-based physiology allowed them to survive in the high-radiation environments around the massive machines, while human technical expertise provided the knowledge needed to sabotage systems that had operated flawlessly for centuries. As the defensive grid collapsed, Zephyrian infiltration specialists used their natural flight abilities to assault orbital platforms from unexpected vectors. The bird-like aliens moved through three-dimensional space in ways that Kithra tactical computers couldn't predict, delivering precision strikes that crippled defensive installations without damaging the civilian population centers below. Commander Morrison led his multi-species squadron directly toward the Collective's primary command center, a massive station orbiting Dominus Prime that had coordinated the oppression of dozens of worlds for over 1,000 years. The station's defenses were formidable, but they had been designed to repel conventional attacks from single-species forces using predictable tactics. All squadrons execute Pattern Omega, Morrison commanded. The attack pattern was something that could only be achieved by pilots from multiple species working in perfect coordination. Zephyrian pilots created three-dimensional distractions that drew fire away from the primary assault vectors, while Mantaric stealth fighters disabled shield generators from positions that conventional sensors couldn't detect. Human pilots, enhanced by neural interfaces that incorporated lessons learned from captured Kithra technology, provided tactical coordination that turned the multi-species assault into a precision instrument of destruction. Within minutes, the command station's defenses were neutralized, and boarding parties were moving through corridors that had never been breached by enemy forces. The Sorok assault troops encountered minimal resistance as they advanced through the station's command levels. The Kithra defenders, their biomechanical enhancements, disabled by quantum disruption fields, were reduced to their baseline capabilities that were no match for the combined fury of the species they had oppressed for centuries. Supreme Commander Zektios was found in the central command chamber, desperately trying to activate a doomsday weapon that would have destroyed the entire system rather than allow it to fall to liberated forces. The device was an ancient relic of the Collective's early expansion period, designed to eliminate troublesome populations that refused to submit to alien rule. General Rodriguez, leading the assault team personally, disabled the weapon with assistance from Dr. Vasquez's engineering specialists. The doomsday device represented everything that was wrong with the Kithra philosophy. They would rather destroy entire worlds than allow other species to determine their own fate. Supreme Commander Zektios, General Rodriguez said as the alien leader was taken into custody, "You're under arrest for crimes against sapient life. You'll be tried by representatives from every species you've oppressed, and justice will be determined by those who survived your attempts at genocide." The capture of the Collective's leadership marked the end of organized resistance, but the liberation of the Kithra home systems revealed horrors that even human intelligence had not anticipated. Vast facilities dedicated to genetic experimentation on enslaved populations, archive systems containing detailed records of the systematic extinction of 17 different species, and cultural suppression programs designed to eliminate any trace of independent thought among conquered peoples. Dr. Webb coordinated the investigation teams as they documented the full scope of Kithra crimes. Admiral, we're finding evidence of systematic oppression dating back over 2,000 years. The Collective didn't just conquer other species. They tried to eliminate any evidence that those species had ever existed as independent civilizations. The discovery of the Cultural Extinction Archives provided the most damning evidence of Kithra methodology. Detailed records showed how the Collective had systematically destroyed the art, literature, history, and traditions of conquered species, replacing them with propaganda that portrayed Kithra rule as natural and beneficial. Admiral Chun reviewed the evidence with representatives from the liberated species, planning the post-war reconstruction that would restore what the Collective had tried to destroy. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored allies, we have an opportunity to create something unprecedented in galactic history. Not an empire built on conquest, but a confederation built on cooperation. The Galactic Liberation Council was formed in the ruins of the Kithra Command Center, with representatives from every liberated species participating as equals in determining the future of their shared galaxy. The human delegation, despite having led the military campaign, insisted on equal representation rather than leadership roles. Commander Morrison found himself appointed as the first director of interspecies military cooperation, tasked with ensuring that no single species would ever again possess the power to oppress others. The multi-species squadrons that had proven so effective against the Collective became the foundation for a defensive force designed to protect freedom rather than project power. The Kithra survivors faced a choice that no species in galactic history had ever been offered after defeat. They could accept judgment for their crimes and work toward rehabilitation within the new galactic community, or or they could face exile to isolated worlds where they could no longer threaten other species. Surprisingly, many Kithra chose rehabilitation. The younger generation, especially those who had been born into the collective's later period of decline, had never fully embraced the supremacist ideology that had driven their species' imperial expansion. They worked with human psychologists and representatives from formerly enslaved species to understand and overcome the cultural programming that had led to their civilization's downfall. Dr. Webb established the Galactic Archives Project, dedicated to recovering and restoring the cultural heritage that the collective had tried to destroy. Working with scholars from every liberated species, the project became a symbol of what cooperation could achieve when guided by respect for diversity rather than fear of difference. The war crimes trials lasted for 3 years, with Kithra leaders facing justice administered by representatives from their former victims. The proceedings were broadcast throughout the galaxy, ensuring that future generations would understand the consequences of choosing genocide as a tool of policy. Admiral Chen's final report to the United Earth government summarized humanity's role in the galactic transformation. We did not set out to become galactic liberators. We simply refused to accept extinction as our fate. In defending ourselves, we discovered that true strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the willingness to stand with others against domination. The memorial to the victims of Kithra oppression was built in orbit around Earth, where the war had begun. Representatives from every species contributed artifacts and records to create a monument that would ensure the galaxy never forgot the cost of allowing evil to go unchallenged. Commander Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood before the memorial during its dedication ceremony, reflecting on the journey that had brought 47 different species together as equals. The Kithra believed that might made right, that technological superiority justified any action. They were wrong. Today, we build a galaxy where right makes might, where technological advancement serves justice rather than oppression. The new Galactic Confederation faced challenges that no civilization had ever attempted to solve. Integrating dozens of different species with wildly different biologies, cultures, and technological capabilities required innovations in diplomacy, engineering, and social organization. But humanity's gift for adaptation and the shared commitment of all liberated species to prevent future oppression made the impossible seem achievable. The Kithra Collective was no more. In its place stood something unprecedented in galactic history, a true confederation of free species, united not by conquest but by choice, dedicated to ensuring that the word liberation would never again be necessary. The galaxy had learned that some wars are worth fighting, and some enemies are worth defeating completely, especially when the cause is the freedom of every sapient being among the stars.